Assalamu alaikum, fam. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of St. Augustine's Confessions. So, what's interesting about this section is there's a lot of questions here, lots of introspection. A lot of the questions he asks, I think we can ask ourselves, and indeed, much of his work is thought-provoking, and we can learn a lot from him about ourselves and just our fellow human beings. Okay, let's begin. How shall I call upon my God for aid, when the call I make is for my Lord and my God to come into myself? Now this is interesting because you sync up this idea of into myself. That's strange for me as a Muslim. I've never heard this expression, but I guess from a Catholic view of the Augustinian order, that you would want God to come into you. So this seems strange, you know? At least for me. I mean, I understand going on the correct path and having your soul emboldened with righteousness. But coming into yourself is really interesting. What place is there in me to which my God can come? What place that can receive the God who made heaven and earth? Well, I think it would be consciousness and heart from their perspective, maybe. Does this then mean, O Lord, my God, that there is in me something fit to contain you? Now this is really interesting because the questions he asked, my God to come into myself, this would then lead to this other question. Something fit to contain you. Well, for me as a Muslim, nothing can contain Allah Azza because then he would be restricted. But I think from their view, it's like passing through to touch their soul, something like that, to linger, in essence, along those lines, I presume. Can even heaven and earth, which you made, and in which you made me, contain you? Probably not, right? Or since nothing that exists could exist with you, does this mean that whatever exists does, in this sense, contain you? Now, this is the paradox, right? This is something that really can make you wonder. But for us, Allah Azza is infinite, the Most High. I understand the Augustinians would have thought something similar to Aquinas, first cause, contingency, and all that. But this part of containment of the inner and outer world is something that has made him wonder. If this is so, since I too exist, why do I ask you to come into me? I'm not sure. It's interesting how he wants to have a piece of God consciousness, apparently. He feels as if it can't manifest within him, but something must go into him. I think they have their Holy Spirit energy going on. For I should not be there at all unless in this way you were already present within me. I am not in hell, and yet you are there too. Well, that's interesting because it's like, is God in hell? Does God need to go to hell? God, that's the very strange thing, is that Allah is outside of this reality. Everything Allah does is befits His majesty. I don't know about that. I think sends beings there, but having to reside there? No, in Islam we have Malik, who is the keeper of hell. There's angels who it's their duty to run the operation. But I don't know. That's a tricky one because I don't think there's a passage that would say something like that. For if I sink down to the world beneath, you are present still. True. I mean, 6 feet deep. It's not that deep. The average grave is 6 feet. I mean, yeah, it's not just like, as you walk on the earth, there's God. No, it's like, just because you go in a couple layers of soil doesn't mean you're out of the reach of God. But I get he also means, like, in this sort of special way, says here that he's referring to Psalms 138:8, 139:8. So then I should be null and void and could not exist at all, if you, my God, were not in me. So he's getting at this in me aspect a lot. Containment, in me, presence. Very interesting. Or is it rather that I should not exist unless I exist in you? No, that definitely is not. No, I don't think so. No. See, he's getting it at, do I ask God to come into me? And then is there a place fit to contain God in me? Or is God always in me? Or do I exist in God? See, he's getting at these very deep, hardcore questions. But I would say humans are a totally separate creation, not even in the same genre, not even in the same, realm, not even capable of the same type of consciousness. But the particles of our bodies, our soul is something unique, but our bodies, no. The soul, though, that's where people get at. For all things find in you their origin, their impulse, the center of their being. So find in you their origin. So being the first, right? Allah, as for them, Jehovah, sending the souls out to be encapsulated in their flesh bags for a term appointed. The center of their being. Hopefully, if they're pious, this, Lord, is true answer to my question. But if I exist in you, how can I call upon you to come to me? This is a thing where it's like, no, you don't exist in God, because God is entirely free of the need of humans, I'd argue. Now, calling for aid, calling for wisdom, knowledge, stuff like that, that is an attribute that I feel like you'll be able to acquire, right? All knowledge comes from God, so I think that you would get knowledge to come into you, but the purification process is only in death, I believe. I think this super pious nature would be for the prophets. But I don't think they would say God came into them. I don't even think they said the Holy Spirit either, because I believe they were pure monotheists and not sharing authority with any other entity on earth. So one must wonder. And where would you come from? Well, we don't know where God is. He's in his domain, right? And no one can ever answer that. For you, my God, have said that you fill heaven and earth, but I cannot go beyond the bounds of heaven and earth so that you may leave them to come to me. So he's gotten at something interesting here. God doesn't need to leave something, but now in Islam we have Allah Azza wa Jal descending over the throne in a way that befits his majesty. But there is no place where God isn't. So, because we know that in Islam has the 7 heavens, and that news is reported to Allah Azza wa Jal, but the logistics of that we're not sure. But there is nothing out of the sight of God. And there's nothing that God can't hear or see. So, this is, interesting, because then you get into, the unknown. The unknown. It's just very difficult. Very thought-provoking questions, right? Makes you wonder. Alhamdulillah.